Today I'm going for a rep PR of 585 pounds, 265 and a half kilos for a double for 2 reps. I've only ever hit this weight for 1 heavy rep at a time.
I want to leave some in the tank. Yeah.
Oh, fuck! That was easy. I did it. What an awesome rep PR. I surprised myself there. The first 2 felt so easy, I went for a 3rd one. And then I also felt like I could have gotten another 2 reps out of there, but I think at that point I would have been like grinding and draining some energy. And I'm only on week 5 of my 8-week program. And the plan is to go heavier next week, so I want to leave some in the tank. What do you guys think? Am I good for hitting 600 pounds for a double next week? I want to know what you think. Predict it, call it, because that's the goal. So can I do it? My best deadlift to date is 640 pounds, which I hit last month. And I put the video for that deadlift PR in the info box below for you guys in case any of you missed it and want to check it out. So today what I want to do is just share everything I know about the deadlift for absolutely free. So this is going to be a 2-part series at least. Today in part 1, I'm just going to go over setting up for a conventional deadlift, the perfect way to find your perfect setup and starting position for a conventional deadlift. But then in the second part, I'm going to go over the most common mistakes that are made in the deadlift, even the tiny ones that are almost impossible to notice when you're deadlifting, how to identify them, and then how to fix them. But anyway, without further ado, guys, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed the free information. It helps get the video circulated and shit, and let's dive in. So the first rule of deadlifting is never ever deadlift in sneakers, ever. In fact, I want you to comment and promise me, Nick, I will never ever deadlift in sneakers again. These are the worst possible things you could ever deadlift in, and they're throwing you off more than you know. See, sneakers are built with this amazing cushiony sole designed to protect your feet from impact when you run. As comfy as that is, what it's doing in a deadlift is it's adding an inch of cushiness between you and the floor. And the rule of thumb with deadlift is you want your feet to have total contact with the ground, and you want that contact to be sturdy. So when you deadlift on top of an inch of cushion, imagine trying to deadlift while balancing on a Bosu ball or while standing on a thick mattress. How unstable would you feel? That's what's happening here with sneakers. Ideally, you want to be barefoot. Obviously, we don't want to get ringworm, but you can take these off and just deadlift in your socks. I did that for years and years at a gym. If you want to save your socks, you can just get a flat-soled shoe, like a wrestling shoe. I personally use Ani's. They're actually a little fresher than a wrestling shoe, and they actually have a slightly thinner sole, and they last forever. No matter what you do, you want a sole that is totally flat and totally thin if you're going to use a shoe at all. And if you're competing in powerlifting, you of course have to wear something on your feet. You can't do in socks. So one of those types of shoes might be your best bet. Now the other rule of thumb regarding your feet is you'll commonly hear you want to sit the weight back onto your heels. That's not bad advice, but it's not perfect. You actually want to be on the center of your foot as much as possible. You want to push that weight down into your arches. Imagine trying to push your arch into the floor beneath it and then through the floor. So let's get into the setup of a conventional deadlift. Now everybody has a different body type, a different build, so everybody's starting position is going to look a little bit different from one another. However, this method is going to teach you how to find your perfect starting position regardless of your build. Step 1, distance from the bar. How close do we get to the bar? How far away do we stand from the bar when starting? Now if you walk up to that bar and have your shins touching the bar, while in a standing position and you're doing a conventional deadlift, you are too close to the bar. Shins should never be touching the bar from a standing position in a conventional deadlift. And I'm gonna get into why and what happens when you do this in part 2 of this video series. Equally, you don't want to stand too far away from the bar. And while it seems like it'd be a little more obvious to notice when you are far away from the bar, you'd be surprised how sneaky it can be. And I'm going to show you examples again in part 2. But for now, just know that you want to keep the barbell over your center of gravity. And in the deadlift, just like the squat, your center of gravity is over the center of your foot, right through that arch. If you look at a locked out deadlift from the side point of view, with bar in hand, you should be able to draw a line from the bar down to the floor and have that line cut the foot in half. And that is your center of gravity, where that line cuts the foot in half. And that line is also your bar path. That is the path your bar should trace from top to bottom and from bottom to top, the entire rep. And you want to keep it in that line the entire time. Your bar path is always in line with your center of gravity. So to begin, you want to start with the bar over the center of your feet. And there are 2 tricks to making sure you nail this. The first one you might have heard of. Walk up to a loaded bar, look down at it, and position your feet until it looks like the bar is cutting your feet in half with an equal amount of foot in front of the bar and behind the bar. And your feet can be pointed slightly out to the sides, that's okay. Or if you feel more comfortable with your feet straight forward, that's also okay. You gotta find what works for you. You definitely don't want your feet ever too far out to the sides though. Now a slightly more accurate way to find this position is to simply pick up the bar in a locked out position. And it can be an empty bar, that's okay, but make sure you're locked out as if you're locking out your max. This means tight glutes, hips are pushed forward, chest is out, shoulders are back. If you deadlift with a staggered grip like I do, then hold that staggered grip. Now, look down at your feet and do the same thing. Now, wherever the bar cuts your feet in half, it's probably gonna be a slightly more accurate position because now you have gravity actually pulling your arms down into your center of gravity in a locked out position. So it's gonna be a more accurate landing on your feet. So wherever that bar is cutting your feet in half now, is where it should be cutting your feet in half when it's back on the ground. Now I mentioned grip quickly there. I use what's called a staggered grip or a switch grip where one hand is over the bar, the other hand is under the bar. And it doesn't matter which hand you use, you may hear that your dominant hand, in my case my right hand, should be the underhand. I personally got into the habit of putting my dominant hand over the bar over 10 years ago, and that's how I've kept it. And I've had no issues with that at all. I've also never switched or alternated which hands go under or over, and I've never dealt with any sort of imbalances. And you want to try to get the bar as far down into your fingers as possible. If you watch my deadlifts when I lock out, the bar is almost in what looks like an open hand. This may take some time and practice, but if you can eventually get it down to hold it as low down in your fingers as possible, it's going to give you longer arms and help your range of motion on the deadlift. Of course, you do need a good bar with knurling for this, and chalk helps as well. Commercial gym bars sadly usually have really poor grip on them. The alternative to this is what is usually confused as an overhand grip when it's not. The strongest lifter in the world is not going to have a strong overhand grip. We can only hold so much weight like this before it rolls out of our hands. What you're actually seeing here with heavy lifts that look like this is what's called a hook grip. And I'm not one to get into the hook grip because I've never mastered it, but it's essentially where you pin your thumb with your 2 front fingers like so. And I might even have that slightly off. Again, there are better videos on YouTube that you can find for how to do a hook grip, but I just wanted to make it clear what that actually was you're seeing. It basically ties your hands to the bar, turns your hands into a human wrist strap. So there's pros and cons to both. That can be an amazing grip to have, especially if you're a sumo puller.
The stagger grip though is a little less painful and easier to get down.
So that's distance from the bar, but what about stance? How wide apart or close together should your feet be? What I want you to do is standing totally still. I want you to jump as high as you can for me. Give me your best standing vertical. And then make a note of where your feet went before they left the ground. Again, the body's always trying to move itself into its strongest position, even subconsciously when you're not trying to. So chances are, without even realizing you did it, you probably repositioned your feet just before jumping into their strongest, most explosive position. That is most likely going to be your power stance and a great place to at least start with your deadlift stance. This is because the way we use our lower body in a jump is very similar to the way we use it in a deadlift. We don't squat into our vertical leaps. If you want to improve your vertical leap, you work on your hip hinge, which is what a deadlift is. When you vertical leap, you sit those hips back, bending the knees just enough to get them behind you, and then you explode off of that hip hinge. So it's actually going to line up really closely to how you want your legs to be positioned in a deadlift. Like I said, once you get comfortable with the deadlift, you can play with it and adjust it as you go. There are some general pros and cons to having a wider stance versus a narrow stance. For example, with the narrow stance, you're moving your feet in closer, which is going to give you room to slide your hands in closer. This is going to allow you to sit more upright, giving you a more vertical torso. This is also going to make your arms nice and straight, 90-degree angle, which is going to give you a much longer reach. See, if my arms are out here, that's going to pull my upper body down towards the floor more. So now I'm more bent over. As far as range of motion goes, if I have long 90-degree arms like this and I pull, look how low the bar lands at the top of the rep. Versus if I have my grip way out here, a shorter reach, chest more towards the floor, the bar has to travel all the way up here now. You're also going to find that the closer your legs are, the more your knees are allowed to travel over the bar, still giving you an upright torso, which is going to give you a little bit more quad drive from the very bottom of the rep, which might make the bar spring off the ground a little bit faster. The downside is now you forfeit posterior chain activation, your hamstrings, your glutes, the back, the driving muscles of the deadlift, and especially what helps that lockout. So what you'll usually find with this when it does start to fail is you'll be very fast off the ground, and then once it gets to your knees, you may find back rounding starts, and you may find that you have a hard time locking out. It's a weaker part of your deadlift. Now on the flip side of that, if you get your stance out wider, it forces your hands out wider, which like I said, pulls your chest down lower and makes it so you have shorter reach now, and potentially a little bit more range of motion to travel that bar. The plus side of this is you do activate much more of your posterior chain now. The knees are not as forward over the bar, which means you may find the pop off the ground may feel a little bit slower, but that's okay because once you get to that lockout position, you're gonna be firing strong. You'll find that wider stance tends to give you a cleaner lockout and a straighter back at the lockout. Now those are exaggerated examples. Of course, you want to try and find a happy medium, get the best of both worlds. Like I said, start with that jumping stance and then figure it out from there. But whenever you do make a change to your stance, make it tiny. I'm talking the slightest change. Don't just jerk your feet out a whole inch from where you just had them. And always make these changes when you're using light weight. Never try and change something up stance-wise when you're already using heavy weight. So we have our foot positioning down and we're gonna cement our feet. They are there to stay now. Now what I want you to do is keep in a totally straight body, and I wanna emphasize a straight torso. Okay, this torso doesn't move. I want you to make believe your spinal cord is one solid rod of steel. Pretend you have a broomstick taped to your tailbone, running up your spine and over the back of your head, and you cannot move your torso. Your torso is one firm pillar. So you can't arch your back, you can't round your back, straight torso the whole time. Knowing that, I want you to then just lower your knees towards the floor in front of you. Push those knees forward over the bar until the shins hit the bar. Boom, once those shins hit the bar, you are there to stay. That's where your knees are gonna be, that's where your shins are gonna be, that's where your ankles are gonna be, that's where your feet are gonna be. Knees down, do not move anymore. They are there to stay. Now knowing that our shins are glued to the bar, they can't come away from the bar at all, and our torso is rigid, I want you to reach down and grab the bar. Now if you just reach forward, your hands are gonna land in front of the bar. It's not gonna work. So what can we do to reach down, keeping our shins where they are, and grab that bar without our back rounding? We simply push our hips backward as we lower our upper body down. Shins are staying where they are, we're pushing our hips back. And remember, we're not pushing our hips down, it's not a squat. They're gonna come down automatically, but we're not forcing them down. We're trying to push our butt back. We're trying to touch the wall behind us with our cushion. So as we do that, you're gonna see my upper body lowers over that barbell, and boom, my hands grab that bar. And you're gonna see that my rear delt is on top of the barbell. That's a good place for your rear delt to be. The rest of my shoulder and my head is in front of the barbell. And boom, that is your setup.
A big rule, guys, is you never move that bar with your shins when you're setting up. You always move around the bar or to the bar. The bar does not move.
Now, two huge details once you're in this position in order to stay tight and safe and strong. Your spine bends like a snake. The only way to prevent it from bending, the only way to keep it a strong rod of iron, to keep your torso a cement pillar, is to brace, what is called the Valsalva maneuver. This is when you inhale air, hold your breath with a big breath of air, like you're about to go underwater for 20 minutes. Hold that air, but force all the pressure, force that air down into your stomach. Breathe that stomach into your crotch, like you're trying to make the fattest belly you can. Show me how fat you can make yourself look with that air. You'll commonly hear, hold the air in your belly, not up in your chest. Now, obviously the air only goes into your lungs, anatomically speaking, but when you're holding that air, you're gonna use that air to force pressure into those abdominal walls. What I want you to do to get familiar with this is put on a belt, a weightlifting belt, and I want you to make it tight enough to where it's comfortable, but you can still slide some fingers in there when you're chilling. Then I want you to breathe as hard as you can out into that belt. Take a big breath of air in and punch that stomach out on all sides, forward and to each side, trying to break that belt off of you. Show me how fat you can make yourself look in the stomach area with that air that you're holding. You need to hold this from the start of the rep to the very top, only exhaling when you lock out the deadlift and you're done with the rep. This is going to give you so much more power when you explode off the ground. You're gonna feel it. And this pressure is gonna make you stay so much tighter now. You're not gonna feel any bending or jelloiness in your back anymore once you get this down. The other big detail, and this is what a lot of people miss or just simply start letting go of once they start getting tired, is the lats. You need tight, packed lats. What I want you to do is to screw your arms into the ground. As you screw them in, your elbows are gonna come in towards your sides. And I want you to really focus on contracting those lats. You are contracting those lats. The lats are what are pulling your elbows in towards you. So we're flexing those lats, getting them nice and tight, driving those elbows into our sides when we do so. And I want you to focus on taking those contracted lats that have screwed those arms into them and putting those lats back in your pocket. Imagine your hips are a mouth and your shoulders are their food, and your hips are trying to suck your shoulders back into them. They're trying to eat your shoulders. And what you're really trying to do is make your torso as short and compact as you can get it, like an accordion. The longer your torso is, the easier it can bend, the weaker it's gonna be when you pull. The shorter and more compact it is, the easier you're gonna be able to drive and lock it out. We're screwing in with our lats, pulling with the lats and shoving our lats and shoulders back into our back pockets of our butt. Twist in, you can see the bar already starts to come in with me. My shoulders slide back towards my butt. And as I do this, my arms suck in and it creates so much tension against my bloated belly. I'm bracing that belly, pushing that pregnant belly right here. It's solid as a rock. And with that, it's pushing into my legs, and then I'm sucking the bar in. So you can see the bar wants to start to leave the ground already. I'm not even pulling it. I'm simply just sucking the shoulders in against my pregnant belly of air, and pure tightness, short torso. And now finally getting the weight to a locked out position. You are never pulling the weight with your torso. You're never pulling the weight up with your back. I want you to look at the deadlift as a pushing movement. You are using your glutes, your butt, your hips to push your upper body into an erect position. Remember, the upper body is locked, loaded, and tight. So wherever you push it, it's gonna move to. If you have a long, loose upper body, you can push. Upper body might stay where it is. That's where you get bending. We don't want that. So tight upper body, now we're just pushing with our hips. What I want you to do is imagine now you're standing still. Instead of doing a vertical, I want you to show me how far you can jump. Do a standing long jump. Again, your legs are gonna break and activate in a similar way to the deadlift. And notice where your hips go. They move up and forward, not just up. That's where I want you to go with the deadlift. I want you to make believe you were trying to do a standing vertical over this bar. That's how I want your hips to explode. So tight, tight, tight air. We're sucking the bar in towards our body. It's already wanting to leave the ground. That's a lot of tension. And then we drive with the legs. That butt, our upper back, it's all leaving the ground at the same time. That air is making us float up like we're buoyant in water. We drive up as soon as the bar gets to our knees. We're not pulling. If you start pulling, that's when this happens. Curved backs, slow lockouts, it's bad. Or your back starts rounding, 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 also bad. When it gets to your knees, I want you to hump the bar. What? Yeah, hump the bar. Literally, how do you hump the bar from here? Boom, humped it. Boom, humped it. Push with your booty, nothing else. You're not pulling the bar to a lockout. You're pushing your ass in front of you to get that bar locked out. I want you to make believe, when you're in a standing position, that there's an invisible little bell being held here by a ribbon, an inch in front of your hips. And when you are deadlifting, when that bar comes to your knees, I want you to ring that bell with your pelvic bone. Lock the knees and the hips out at the exact same time. Knees should never lock out before the hips. If they do, that's a problem, and we'll address it in the next video. Flex the quads like you're in a bodybuilding show and drive those knees straight. Push those feet into the ground underneath you to lock the knees and the hips out at the same exact time. So to wrap this video up, let's run through it really quick. We're cutting our feet in half through both of the methods we went through to find our distance from the bar. We know our stance because it's our jumping stance to start off with at least. We're lowering our shins to the bar. We're keeping a tight, rigid upper body. Just by pushing our hips back behind us, we are going to reach down and grab that bar. Once the bar is reached, we are bracing, punching that belly in, and as we do so, we're screwing the arms in, using the lats to pull the elbows into our body, and pulling our shoulders back down into our rear pants pockets. As soon as we get to our knees, we're humping that bell in front of us with our butt. Hump the bar in front of you. And the tighter you keep your torso, the easier it's gonna be to hump. Remember, soft torso makes it a lot harder to get those hips through. That's why your lockout's slow. I really hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions about any parts of it, please let me know in the comments and I'll try to touch on it in the future. Definitely watch out for the next video, because the next video I think is gonna be even more helpful and in-depth on what to look for and how to adjust and tweak your positioning from here moving forward. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that bell so you get notified when the next part's up, and I'll see you in a following video.